Hello everyone. I hope you are all having an excellent day. I'm Timothy Ryan Murphy, and my project is titled A Query on Remote Learning. As we have all clearly been made aware of, the world has been hit by a literal plague. This calamity came in the form of a very real biological threat that we have all referred to as COVID-19, a rather virulent form of coronavirus. The effects of COVID-19 have been terrible, disastrous, and on a global scale. As we attempted to try to reduce the effectiveness of the widespread transmission of the virus, society has made significant concessions to do so. The most effective of which has been the practice of our nation going into a state of quarantine. Although not everyone believes in the efficacy of this practice, it has most certainly had an utterly tremendous effect on how educational systems, as well as the workplace, have functioned. Schools of all levels have moved to entirely online formats during the beginning of quarantine, and the professional world followed suit where possible, using and implementing remote formatted work, leaving those who absolutely must work in a physical capacity as essential workers. As time continued forward, the effects and severity of COVID-19 have lessened to some extent, allowing more physical in-classroom learning and physically commuted working. However, many individuals, academic institutions, and companies have realized that remote learning and working has been surprisingly effective in cutting costs as well as simply being incredibly convenient for students and employees who can make the same accomplishments without having to sit in a car to commute. As a result, it is highly possible that remote learning and working may be here to stay in a significant capacity, even when COVID has found its death knell and eventually subsides into our history books. That is where this project finds its purpose. During the course of this project, I have developed a framework of categorized questions to ask those that I associate with on social media. These questions cover a varied set of criteria in regards to work or school life, both before and after COVID-19, and reached a varied spread of 24 participants, of which there are significant variables of age, gender, and life experience. This data will be further categorized and broken down after it's collected, so that I may form further conclusions on whether people prefer remote practices and whether or not they are more or less effective than the standard. The methods used to acquire the data that is essential to this project were really rather simple. As I have many people on my Facebook from many different backgrounds that I know that I can trust for reliable and accurate results, I had sent the questions their way. The initial survey consisted of 30 questions. 10 of these questions were all set into one of the three major categories. These categories that I have created are to greater classify and diversify the data that I have received and eventually processed into accurate and condensed statistics. The survey is very quick and only required a numeric response from 1 to 5 based on the accuracy of the statement in question. Each question aligns with the category that it belongs to, and the three categories are happiness, efficiency, and satisfaction. As a whole, the survey, these three categories, and these 30 questions relate to the recipient's opinion and experiences with both physical pre-COVID job and academic experiences, as well as the remote learning and business opportunities that they are currently participating in post-COVID. After the information was recorded into an Excel file, the original conversation was deleted and the Excel file saved onto a personal solid-state drive, as well as onto several removable USB devices for safekeeping. This ensures that the data is private and confidential, as well as safe in the instance of hardware destruction, item loss, or file corruption. The method for data storage on this project has been rather simple and straightforward. much like the actual acquisition of the data. The data was acquired from the user over social media, collected onto an Excel file, and then deleted from the original private message. After collection, the Excel sheets would be saved onto my personal computer's SSD, but also onto several removable USB flash drives. As the Excel file was updated, so too would be the files held on the various storage devices that were implemented on this project. The storage devices were also kept at different locations, in the unlikely circumstance that any device was stolen, destroyed, lost, or corrupted, as well as the potential risk of my personal computer breaking or lacking potential function. These storage methods are more than sufficient for purposes of security as well, as they do not list or display the names or identities or anything that could hint as such of the original survey participants. As this information is of no tangible value to any outside of the context of this project, the information is utterly worthless to any who would try to use this data for any malicious or less savory purpose, which is perhaps the greatest security measure of all. The information that was gathered and converted into statistical data for this project is not complex. It comes in the form of small integers from 1 to 5, which are then averaged. The data is then held on a spreadsheet where the visual graphs are generated. These very graphs are shown further in this presentation and show several different criteria. The data is compared in each graph for post and pre-COVID. It further differentiates based on the entire survey group, those from 15 to 29 years of age, as well as for those 30 years of age or older. Though stated before, I will summarize the state and purpose of the data for greater clarity. All of the data originated from a 30-question survey that was sent out via social media. The test is composed of 30 questions that span 3 categories, which are happiness, efficiency, and satisfaction. Each question is answered with a numeric value from 1 to 5 based on accuracy, which are then averaged. The participant essentially takes 2 identical tests, both for pre- and post-COVID, which are compared side by side. The data is then further broken down into age demographic barriers. As mentioned before, the data was surprisingly simple and easy to gather. I had a sufficient number of participants, 24 in total, that gave me feedback on my query. Individuals that managed to complete the survey had much to say about their opinions on coronavirus and the effects it has had on their lives due to invoking quarantine. The information that was gathered revealed some very interesting statistics. For the entire pool of surveyees, the general averages for happiness were lower for post-COVID than pre-COVID, possibly a result of reduced socialization and human contact that comes from the teamwork and camaraderie of working in an office or classroom. Inversely, however, both efficiency and satisfaction ranked higher for post-COVID as opposed to pre-COVID. This could be seen as a result of more personal time due to not having to commute or having less distractions in the form of peers or coworkers. In this regard, it seems that distance learning and working was almost overall preferred for the main population. The main chart and vision of the combined data was certainly enlightening, but it was not yet enough. I needed to further break down the information into smaller groups to form a better and more complete total picture. The data revealed that the younger demographic showed far more favorable outlooks on distance learning and working than their older counterparts. The younger group, aged 15 to 29, showed greater preference for post-COVID outlooks, having almost universally lower scores for pre-COVID, while having substantially higher scores in satisfaction and efficiency, and much lower pre-COVID happiness, and slightly less post-COVID happiness. This can be somewhat possible as a result of growing up with greater technological immersion. The information gained from those in the 30 or older demographic were harshly different in all categories except post-COVID happiness. They showed an intense favoritism towards more traditional methods of work or schooling, with substantially higher pre-COVID scores in all categories that dwarfed their younger counterparts, though post-COVID scores in efficiency and satisfaction skewed lower. There was no significant difference in opinion between sex or gender, so this was not included in the test. Though the sample size was not large enough to form its own table, those with more tech-oriented majors, such as computer science or information technology, scored higher than average for post-COVID stats. The only concern with this data is that it would show more accuracy if the 15 to 29 and 30 and up groups had closer participant numbers, as the younger groups had a larger number of participants. As mentioned before, the survey is very simple. It utilizes questions, 10 for each category, with 3 categories, for a total of 30 questions. The participant simply answers with a score of 1 for not accurate and 5 for very accurate in each question. Each question is related to each category from a traditional point and as a post-COVID remote practice, as there are 2 identical tests that are administered. When the responses are received, the scores are averaged by category, and then the total is averaged. To summarize this presentation, COVID has been a worldwide pandemic that has greatly affected us all. The effects of quarantine have shown us that remote learning and working is not only possible, but also entirely preferable to many individuals. Overall, younger groups seem to prefer post-COVID learning and working, while older individuals tend to prefer more traditional environments. This was a very interesting project that hopefully piqued the curiosity of those who watched it. I've truly learned quite a lot on the topic of information management this semester. I would like to thank all of my peers who have offered their opinions and constructive criticism, as well as to our instructor, Professor Carmen. No external sources were referred to, and only the provided course materials were used during the course of this assignment. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a great night.